So let me just ask you something. So was your grandfather's death the first big death that you dealt with, or were there others that you remember before then?
His was the first.
And how old were
I
you?
I was 11.
Wow.
11, 1986, I was 11.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
and if you had to say what role he played in your life, what was it?
Yeah.
What was his role?
Well, he was a superhero to us.
Mhm.
Honestly, he really was, because he was everything that's all we pretty much knew. The bulk of us, as far as I'm concerned, he was a superhero. Granddad couldn't do no wrong. And
Mhm.
it was always where he it seemed as though anything that we needed, he had the answer for.
Mhm.
So, I mean, he was even more than a dad. He was more than just a granddad. You know, that was the part. I think that was we had that from, but he was also the authority. He also he also corrected us when we needed correcting, and all of that. But even in that, it was no love lost, because we knew, he was the one who'd be like, "I told you don't do that, so you're gonna get this." I think he might have. I think if I recall, I think he might have spanked me one time in my whole life. I think if I can recall. But then he also was the granddad who played to the spirituals with his broom in the morning,
Mhm.
dancing around the kitchen while my grandmother cooked, and
Mhm.
all of us grandkids dancing and singing with him and all those type of things. He would get all of us singing. So yeah, he was everything to us. I think he was just everything. He was a superhero to us. He couldn't do no wrong,
Mhm.
taking us.
What do you remember about the process of him dying? Like getting sick and then dying? What?
Well, we really, as far as I knew, I really didn't know too much, because back then they sheltered us from a lot of what was going on. All we knew is that granddad went to the hospital. Like, it wasn't until, I believe, after until he got the trach that I knew he even had cancer. And that was a long process from the time he first got sick to the time he ended up getting a trach and things like that. There was a lot of time in between there.
Mhm.
We never knew what was wrong.
Mhm.
I never knew anyway. Let me put it that way. I don't know if my cousins knew, but I never knew. I just knew he was sick. Nobody really explained to us really the extent of what was going on.
Mhm.
So, like, when he left that night, I mean, I ran up the steps behind my grandmother when he rang his bell, and I ran up there behind her, and along with a couple of other people. And I remember my grandmother holding him, and he was throwing up blood over her shoulder, and the room was full of blood. He was just throwing it up. And then she turned around, "You go downstairs," screamed at me to go downstairs, and they closed the door, pushed me down to go downstairs. But that was what I remember. But even in all of that, I still didn't think it was as serious as him dying.
Mhm.
It was like that was nothing I could have imagined, like him dying and not being here. Because he's our grandfather. I expected him to just be there. He comes through everything.
Well, plus two, if you hadn't experienced death before,
Uh,
and he had this Superman persona, who expects Superman to die? Nobody does.
exactly. So,
Mhm.
like, I was totally shocked. But I also feel like that they did I'm not gonna say it was good or bad, but they sheltered us from knowing what was really going on with him.
Mhm.
You
What
know,
What do you remember about his funeral?
I, other than it was at Asbury and there was a lot of people, I
Mhm.
don't really remember much. I
Mhm.
really don't remember much of the funeral. I don't. Not that I can recall. I just remember what he had on, but I think that was probably more from the picture. It was just so much. I
Mhm.
don't remember. I remember it being a long line of people
Mhm.
driving through Frederick to go to Fairview
Mhm.
Cemetery.
So talk about the picture.
Well, the picture was him. He was in the casket and he had on a burgundy suit.
You took
I,
it?
no, I don't know where the picture came from. I don't even know where them pictures are today. I
Wow.
have no idea. I
Mhm.
have no idea where those pictures came from. I probably swiped them from somewhere because I don't know who would have taken a picture.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I have no idea where that picture came from, but I remember having them. And he had a burgundy suit on, and I mean, he was just there. That's just what I remember.
Mhm.
He had, of course, he had a head full of hair, a pompadour. I remember all of that. He was combing his hair forward and put it and mush it like this. I remember my granddad doing that. He would comb it forward like that. That's how he used to comb. So I do remember those things. And he had that same hairdo in that casket with that burgundy suit on. Because he didn't lose no hair.
So what did you do? What did you do with the picture?
I took it to school with me for show and tell. I took it to school and showed it to my 6th grade teacher, Miss Witt. I would never forget it. And she was just looking like, oh, that's nice. Like, what do you do with a picture of a dead person? I don't know why, but I was just so proud of that picture. Not proud of it, but it was my granddad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It was just something about that picture. I don't know if I was proud of it, because I don't remember being sad looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't remember being sad. I just remember this is my granddad. He just died. And I don't know if I was appropriate, because I've never experienced nothing like that. So I don't know what was appropriate or what wasn't.
Well, you said you were 11.
Huh?
You said you were 11.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
didn't know anything.
No, and it was just a picture of my granddad that just happened to be dead.
Mm-hmm.
To me, you know, I mean, it's crazy now, but I mean, I was really that naive to that whole situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was appropriate, what you supposed to do, what you ain't supposed to do. I didn't know any of that.
So 1986 is
Mhm.
what, 34 years ago, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how
Wow.
was he still with you?
Well, shoot, I still remember everything that he said. Well, I don't eat fish today because of him. That's for sure. And what I do remember is I remember from granddad, it's okay to be exactly who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because the funny thing about it is that when all the other kids was touching worms, I wouldn't touch no worm. Even back then, I was like, I'm not touching no worm. They was disgusting to me, so I wasn't touching a worm. So granddad gave me bread. You know what I'm saying? But here, you fish with this. And
Mm-hmm.
he'll give me this. So I think it taught me it's okay to be different than everybody else.
Wow.
I really do believe that, because he never once chastised me or yelled at me because I didn't want to touch a worm. He already knew I just wasn't touching a worm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to touch a worm. And if I caught a fish, I'm not taking it off the hook. I'm not touching it. You know, so he just went right on with his day. If I caught a fish, he took it off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he cut that one open, that ruined me for fish forever. And I still don't eat fish to this day because of that. So that's how he's still with me today.
Mm-hmm. The last thing is, based on the stories you tell, it's almost like your grandfather, while he was a grandfather, he was also a father.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like that's the same for a lot of your fellow cousins.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so as a group, do you think his death what kind of impact did his death have on the group?
Well, I believe that, because one thing about us is that all 6 kids, and at that time, I believe it was 11 grandkids when he died.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe it was 11 at the time he passed. We always raised the siblings anyway. All of us, granddad nurtured everybody. So I can only imagine, if I feel the way I feel, I'm sure that they have their own individual, because he was everything to all, but he was individual. He treated us individually as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so according to where we are and who we were.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it really affected, it made us closer.
Mm-hmm.
Because when he died, I mean, when he passed, we actually all got close, and not that we weren't close before. I think it's what we've always been, and I don't think we've really changed,
Mhm.
other than growing up and living our lives. But I noticed we still close, and
Mhm.
I think that's a legacy left from him. Because
Mhm.
one thing that he always did say is, when everything else is turmoil, and everything else goes away, your family is always your family. I
Mhm.
remember him telling me that you can't pick and choose them regardless.
Yes.
They are who they are.
Yeah. And
So that's what he tell us young.
when I look at you guys, I think you have continued the legacy because you, in raising your niece, you
Hmm.
seem to be raising her with her cousins as
Yeah,
almost her siblings.
yeah.
Mhm.
And it's ironic because even just yesterday, all of the cousins, all of my first cousins, we all just got on a video chat, all of us together,
Mhm.
and just sat on there for an hour, just carrying on and shooting the breeze,
Mhm.
just because we ain't seen each other. So I think those are stuff that's passed down from my grandfather, because he was big on family.
Mhm.
I'm saying, being his niece, he was big on family, his siblings,
Yes.
his mom, his dad. He was big on family. And
Mhm.
so he made sure that we was too.
Mhm.
That I don't care what goes on. When it's all said and done, they're still your family.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Period. You don't discount family. They are family. And
Mhm.
so he always stuck by us with that, and instilled that in us.
Yeah. So with Whole Heart, we have this whole initiative, Life Lost Leadership and Legacy. And when I
Mm-hmm.
think about what you're saying, I think about that your grandfather was larger than life, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
he lived
Mm-hmm.
his life,
Yeah.
and he did it in such a way that his loss still profoundly affects, but also inspires everybody, because you want to live
Yeah.
up to what he
Yeah.
expected of you. And
Yep.
I think the reason why you want to do it is because he was a leader in the family, that he showed you guys the things to do. And I
Yeah.
think fundamentally was how important family is. And at the end of the day, that's his legacy. That's why all these years later, you can recall so much about him,
Right.
because his legacy is almost as if he will never die.
Right. And I also, just positioning. I'm the oldest grandson.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me, and my grandfather used to tell me, you're the oldest.
Wow.
It
Wow.
was at that time, um, Toy was the oldest in the house, but I was the oldest boy, and Mo's the oldest girl, period. But Mo came periodically.
Mm-hmm.
But in the house consistently, me and Toy, me being the oldest boy, I was given responsibility over Dewan and Al.
Mm-hmm.
You're the oldest boy,
Mm-hmm.
Toy over Kente and the younger girls.
Mm-hmm.
So we was given that then.
And
Like
you
if we
were
went got in the pool, all of us got in the pool and we had our underwears on and we got beat, he
uh-huh,
got after me. He's
uh-huh.
like, you ain't supposed to get in the pool with your underwears on. And you're the oldest, so you should know better. That type thing.
And you and Toy are really in those positions today,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
which I think
Yeah.
is beautiful.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm. It's absolutely, but it's beautiful. It's the
Yeah.
beauty of life that regardless of what we lose, we still have it.
Mm-hmm.
We might
Mm-hmm.
hurt, we might regret it, but we still have it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just awesome. I would never forget him. And not to mention the fact that I probably look the most like him of all
Mm-hmm.
the kids, all the grandkids. I
Absolutely.
got a picture of him when at my age, I was like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really crazy.
But the last question is, how does the loss of him, how does it impact the way that you deal with your own mother, his daughter right now?
Um, well, looking at her, I believe that my mother probably, and not because she's my mother, but honestly, I think my mother is the most like him of all the kids.
Wow.
I really do.
Mm-hmm.
Just because my granddad was a go-getter. He went and made stuff happen.
Mm-hmm.
My mother also did the same. My mother was the only child that ain't never go back home.
Mm-hmm.
When she was out, and she made it work. Not to say that there was anything wrong with none of the rest of them or nothing like that, but it was just the simple fact that was her grind.
Mm-hmm.
She was gonna do it. So she's a lot stubborn, and she was real hard-headed, just like my granddad was. When he put his mind to something, that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Ain't no change in his mind. Maybe later, but when he said that's what it is, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Just like that. And so to see her lose all that, just like I did with my granddad, it really takes its toll on me. One, because not only because she's my mom, but two, she's one of the strongest, most independent women I know. And to watch her become completely dependent on somebody else. And it's not even necessarily the physical attribute of it, it's what it's doing to her mentally that kills me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like the roles are reversed.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have to be the one to voice of reason.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have to be the one to keep talking her off the ledge and keeping her encouraged.
Mm-hmm.
That it's okay, it's not that bad. You will be off, you're gonna be fine, and or whatever. The same thing she used to do to me as a child, I now do to her.
Yeah. But being in that position, what does that do to you mentally, spiritually?
It's really draining. I mean, there were times where I wished that she would just go on the glory, because watching her suffer, I'm in every surgery, and the things that she has to endure in a surgery, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy.
Mm-hmm.
I watched them not be able to find a vein and have to go in her neck, and she's awake. And then I remember we were always saying, I decide to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. That's what we always saying.
Mm-hmm.
Every single time that she's in there, and I know she's scared, and I'm scared.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we did. And but there were times where I just wished she didn't have to suffer the way that she does.
Mm-hmm.
But then I look at her and then I say, okay, she's gonna fight. She's fighting. And I'm saying, Mama, are you giving up? She's like, boy, I'm not giving up nothing. I'm gonna live until I die.
Mm-hmm.
That's her famous word. And I'd be like, okay, so if she continues to fight, I have to continue to fight with her.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is draining, it's exhausting, because as a son, to feel helpless, and I don't care how spiritual you are, I don't care how holy you are, I don't care how many scriptures you know, when you see your mama in a state like that, everything that I'm supposed to be spiritually goes out the window, and I'm just son, looking at my mama.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, the spirituality of it does come into play. But when I'm in the moment and I'm watching this, my heart is hurting as a son, and that's my mama. You understand? Now, God does come in and does what He does, but that's normally after the fact. And then my spiritual side of it is really for her.
Mm-hmm.
I have to go to the heavens to know how to be able to deal with her, because I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
So I have to consult the Lord. What's going to touch her? What's going to move her?
Mm-hmm.
What is going to do it? And I'm taking it that deep, but to her, it's just my son who's spiritual is here, and he always has the right thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
That's my baby. That's how she looks at it.
Mm-hmm. So you're consulting the Lord for what to say to her, but in the midst of it, you're grieving too.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
where do you find your peace and restoration?
I need to learn. That is the part that I struggle with, because I don't understand. I don't really have the balance of, yes, I know God can do all things. And I ask Him, just give me peace.
Mm-hmm.
All I need is peace in the midst of everything,
Mm-hmm.
because I wrestle with that consistently,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I have a problem going over there.
Yeah.
Because I'm so depressed and sad when I leave,
Mm-hmm.
that I have to refight and get myself back together. And so what that does is it hurts her, because I go less. I don't go as often.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's thinking, oh, you just leaving me. And that's a whole nother can of worms that just weighs on me, because it's not that. It's not that I just want to leave her. I can't stand to be there sometimes, because it's just overwhelming for me.
Yeah.
But that's the most recent, and that's recent though. I don't know. It's not like that's always been the case. Because I mean, if she was home and I had to take care of her, I would take care of her.
How long has she been in nursing home?
Probably 10 years, 10, 11 years now.
So when you say that's recent, the last year, last 2 years?
Within the last 2 to 3 years, maybe since my grandmother passed. Now
Mm-hmm.
that I'm sitting there thinking about it,
Mm-hmm.
because it was easier for her when my grandma was here.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been, I mean, I can't really pinpoint it, but you know what? Now that I think about it, that's when most of us really have issues going, when
Mm-hmm.
my grandmother passed.
And why do you think that is?
I think because then my mother still had stability because it was her mama.
Mm-hmm.
And so the burden, so the onus wasn't on me to be everything
Yes.
because her mama was there.
Yes.
And
Yes.
her mama knows what to say to her to make her feel the way she's supposed to feel because it's her mama.
Yes.
And I think now the onus is really on me
Mm-hmm.
more now because her mama's gone.
Yes.
You know?
I could see that increased pressure could deal with you mentally, physically,
Yeah, yeah,
because that's a lot of pressure and weight on one set of
yeah.
shoulders. Mm-hmm.
And so I think that now that we're sitting here talking about it, I never even thought of it that way until just now. But I think it's probably been since my grandmother died.
Mm-hmm.
Because my grandmother was even equally important to me as my mother.
Yeah.
You know, her opinion mattered, her all that. I mean, she had a real profound insight on my life. The one time that she slapped me, I cried for a week. She had to come and apologize. I was devastated. And all she did was slap my hand, and I cried for a whole week. My mother had to call her and tell her, "You got to come and talk to this boy because he's still crying." My grandmother was everything to me, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Toy was granddaddy's baby, and I was my grandmother's baby. My grandmother was everything to me. It
It's
was
interesting
crazy.
that you would say that because it makes me wonder, did you ever really get a chance to grieve her, not just as a grandmother, but as the big figure she was in your life? You may not have had. What do you
Probably not. Probably not. And then to see it with my mom. Well, I remember being a boy. I think I told them because I was so afraid of death that
Mm-hmm.
I had to go to counseling when I was a teenager. I was young. I think it might be around the time that my grandfather died.
Okay.
That really affected me. And I had to start I went to Rock Creek for counseling,
Mm-hmm.
not to go to school because I ain't riding to the bus. Not to say there's nothing wrong with that, but I didn't ride the little bus to school. I went for counseling, and I remember them telling me, I remember saying to them that I wish that I would die before my mother and grandmother.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Wow.
wanted to die before them because I didn't want to deal with the pain of them not being here.
Wow.
That was profound. And my mother was like, and when they told my mother, that's what I had said, because I had an individual session,
Mm-hmm.
and then she had one with her.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, and I remember her telling me, no. You don't know what that would do to me as your mother to lose a child. The
Mm-hmm.
order of things is I'm supposed to go before you. I've
Wow.
lived my life. You need to live yours. You're too young to think like that. I
Mm-hmm.
got in a point where I didn't want to do nothing. I didn't get up. I didn't want to get dressed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to do nothing because my logic was, what's the point?
Wow.
We're going to die anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So why go through that?
How we began this conversation with the impact of your grandfather's death, and you didn't even mention this, which I think
It just dawned on me. Yeah, like
right.
because like when I was thinking about it,
Mm-hmm.
I related to my grandmother and my mother and not to my granddad.
Mm-hmm.
When probably the reason I felt that way was probably because he died.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
But my initial reaction to them was I just didn't want to die before them.
Mm-hmm. And
So that's why I was so sad.
if you said that as a child, now fast forward as an adult, and your grandmother has died, then that's coming true. Then the other part is for your mom.
Yeah.
So I wonder if well, I believe it's grief.
Yeah.
It activated something.
Oh, I believe it now. I believe it now more than ever.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of now, what do you do? Because I mean, her circumstance, unless it's divine intervention, her circumstance isn't going to change. This is the reality of it. This is my reality.
Mm-hmm.
This is what it is. And I found myself probably getting ill or allow myself to become ill because of that.
Yes.
What takes its toll on me.
Yes.
Yeah. So
This,
it's a process.
it's a process, and it's deep. And I think, AJ, that more people need to have conversations like this.
Mm-hmm.
You having it with me, it's just what you're getting out of it is what you hear yourself saying, and you're connecting pieces
Right.
that you didn't connect
Yeah.
previously. So when you say, what do I do with it? Well, now you have more ammunition to do something because you now understand it better than you even did,
Yeah.
an hour ago.
Right. Right. That's a lie. I don't know where we're gonna go, but then I don't know.
Yeah, well, I would say out of this that I'm just going to encourage people to tell their story, start processing it with other people.
Yeah.
Somebody being intellectually curious, asking you questions, and you're answering them. And I think out of it comes some revelation, so that you can then, now that I know what the issue is, now I can pray, now I can meditate about all of these things so that I know what the next step is. It starts with awareness.
Yeah. Right. I
So,
know that's right. Yes.
well, I appreciate you talking about life, loss, leadership, and legacy.
No problem. No problem.